Hello and welcome to the session on Psychology of Adjustment. The process of adjustment. In everyday life, frequent use is made use of the word adjustment. Adjustment can be defined as a person's interaction with his environment. Each person constantly strives to meet his needs and reach his goals. At the same time, he is under pressure from the environment to behave in certain ways. Adjustment involves the reconciliation of personal and environmental demands. Interaction means mutual bearing or influence. Every person is influenced by his surroundings, and each one has some effect on the particular environmental setting. Sometimes an individual is more influenced than influential, and sometimes it is the other way around. Environment refers to everything external to the person with which he is in some relation. In the study of adjustment, the unit of study is frequently a social group. For example, the individual is studied in relation to his family or to the people with whom he works. Adjustment, as it was defined earlier, is the interaction between a person and his environment. How we behave in a situation depends on our personal characteristics and depends on the characteristics of the situation as well. In explaining human behavior, psychologists have tended to refer to the attributes of the individual. Relatively, little attention has been given to environment. In trying to understand the perplexing actions of a friend or acquaintance, we are more likely to wonder what there was in him that made him behave as he did rather than what there was in situation that triggered his behavior. Adjustment varies from situation to situation. You may have adjusted well to one school, but badly to a second. And within each school, your adjustment varied depending who the teacher and other students were and upon many factors in the classroom. The next discussion is meant to serve as an overview of the adjustment process. Motive. Our behavior seems to be fairly consistent or pattern. We tend to behave in the same way, reacting to the same needs and seeking the same goals. These patterns of need, impelled and goal directed actively, are called motives. As this discussion indicates, the concept of motive includes the ideas of needs, act and goal. A need is a condition that prompts us to act. For example, we all need oxygen, food and rest. Some of us need to be with people and others need to be apart from them, etc. Act refers to behavior that is stimulated by the need and directed towards a goal. It may be a simple reflex action or two complicated series of events. Goals are the end toward which an act is directed. Goals can be tangible things, food, shelter, money and children. Other goals are intangible. For example, the end which is sought may be the approval of others or one's own self-respect. Frustration. Stimulated by our needs, we act to reach our goals. Some of our goals are easily reached, but many needs are poorly met or met only after a great struggle. Anything that interferes with need-impelled, goal-directed activity can be called a frustration. Frustration is a fact of life. Frustration can be lacks or deficiencies. To lack enough time or enough money to do all the things we want to do is a common frustration. Or we may lack the intelligence or knowledge or skill that a particular situation requires. Next is conflict. One of the most important forms of frustration is conflict. A conflict involves the simultaneous operation of mutually incompatible patterns of behavior. The individual must choose one pattern or the other. Until he does, he remains in a state of frustration. Many conflicts are simple ones. They involve several attractive choices, and no matter which choice we get, something we like. Other conflicts are not so easily resolved. We may be confronted with several causes of action, none of which is very attractive. Probably most conflicts are between a number of alternatives, each of which has one desirable and undesirable features. Next is anxiety. It is a very important term in adjustment, but it is complex. Anxiety is defined as a state of arousal caused by threat to one's well-being. Anxious feelings can be objective in the sense that we, ourselves and other people can understand and share them. Some other feelings seem quite unobjective. We may be anxious without knowing why, or fearful about something that most people are not aware of. We may be crippled by anxiety. Sometimes we are forced to abandon certain courses of action because of the anxiety they produce. Sometimes we must take measures to defend ourselves from anxiety. Learning. Learning refers to changes in behavior that came about through practice and experience. We grow and we learn. Human behavior is heavily influenced by learning. Some principles of learning highly relevant to the study of adjustment are reinforcement, extinction, generalization and discrimination. Defense. Certain patterns of behavior which are employed to protect oneself against threat or anxiety are called defenses. These patterns are also called defense mechanisms or adjustment mechanisms or ego defense mechanisms. Some important defenses are the following. First one is suppression. Effortfully inhibiting the expression of the threatening impulse is called suppression. These efforts are not always successful. We use suppression a great deal in everyday life. We close our eyes to unpleasant sights. We deafen our ears to criticism. Suppression is a useful and necessary mechanism. Every society requires its individuals to inhibit or modify their impulses in some way, but not all uses of suppression are beneficial. Constantly shunted aside, many adjustment problems grow less manageable, and the momentary relief that suppression brings can be purchased at considerable cost of future happiness. Repression. The unconscious or automatic inhibition of threatening impulse is called repression. Repressive efforts are not always successful. Repression prevents us from thinking distressing feelings and from engaging in certain action which might prove dangerous or painful. But problems that are kept out of awareness cannot be faced or solved. Repression brings some relief from anxiety, but it can also restrict, impoverish and distort behavior. Another one is rationalization. Interacting behaviors in an acceptable way in order to prevent a threat to one's sense of well-being is called rationalization. It is operated unconsciously. The rationalizer deceives others and himself. Next is adjustment by ailment. Sometimes, without any conscious pretense, we may feel ill even though the doctor can find nothing physically wrong. The relatively non-insightful use of illness, imaginary or real, as a way of averting anxiety is called adjustment by ailment. This defense protects us in various ways. We may take an imaginary ailment to take our attention away from an anxiety-provoking problem. The next is fixation. It refers to the continuation of a pattern of behavior which has become immature and inappropriate. A person who uses fixation as a defense responds to threat by adhering to old ways of things rather than trying out those which would be more suited to the situation at hand. Regression. It refers to the recovery of a pattern of behavior which has characteristic of an earlier level of development. The regressed person appears then to be functioning in an age appropriate way. Identification. It is a general term which refers to the various ways in which we establish a oneness with another person, group or object. We are said to identify with another person when we model our behavior after him and become like him. We also identify when we regard another person as an extension of ourselves, so that in a sense what happens to this person also happens to us. Projection. It refers to our tendency to attribute our own thoughts, feelings and actions to others. Both positive and negative qualities can be projected. It has been suggested that we project acceptable and positively valued characteristics to people whom we like and identify with. Unacceptable, negatively valued qualities are projected to people whom we dislike. Displacement. In displacement, there is a shift of thought, feeling or action from one person or situation to another. Sometimes the new object is similar to the original. The two may stand for each other or be identified with each other in the same way, and the new object symbolizes the old one. Reaction formation. It refers to the efforts to inhibit, mask or overcome certain impulses by emphasizing opposite ones. Sensing fear, we may attempt to act very brave. Sensing weakness, we may attempt to be tough and hard-boiled. Next topic, school adjustment. A large portion of childhood, adolescence and young adulthood is spent in the classroom. School experiences during these important formative years may have a widespread and lasting effect. Some of us have found the classroom stimulating and rewarding. Others may have reacted with differences, ambivalence or open antagonism. Teachers and parents frequently talk about a particular child's adjustment to school. They may say that the child is making a very good adjustment, or with considerable concern they may note that the child seems unable to adjust. One way of defining school adjustment is to equate it with achievement. Whatever else a school may be called upon to do, it is expected to impart certain knowledge and skills to the student. The student who does not learn, who is held back in grade or who drops out of school before graduation fails to meet this criteria of adjustment. In practice, the achievement expected of a particular child is determined by a number of factors. One very important consideration is the average achievement of other children of his age and grade. The second important factor is a child's aptitude or learning potential. Considering these factors, a brilliant child who is doing only a slightly better than average work would be making an unsatisfactory adjustment. At the same time, a child of very limited potential might be thought of as making a satisfactory adjustment if his achievement was commensurate with his ability. A second way of defining school adjustment is in terms of the relationship that a child forms with his teachers and fellow students. By this definition, a child who gets along with his classmates and his teachers is considerably adjusted. In practice, this explanation proves to be not simple. For one thing, classmates and teachers may differ in their ideas of acceptable or praiseworthy behavior. The matter is made even more complicated by the varying views of adjustment taken by teachers, parents, school psychologists and other authorities. There is, of course, little disagreement in identifying the very deviant child, but less clear-cut cases may be considered maladjusted by one worker but not by another. Academic achievement and social adjustment tend to be related in the elementary and secondary grades. Although schools are most directly concerned with the academic achievement of students, it is frequently noted that a child who is not achieving well has a number of personal problems, and that the child who has personal problems is not achieving well. It has been noted that problems which a child appears to develop at school and perhaps in connection with a particular teacher may be traceable to the child's home and family life. The classroom may trigger or precipitate a problem which has been building up in other areas. Sometimes a child displays fear and anger stemming from relationship with parents onto teachers and other school authorities. The teacher's needs, frustrations, conflicts, anxieties and adjustment patterns will influence the teaching process and the classroom environment. And the school and classroom environment will influence the teacher's adjustment. There is considerable controversy concerning the amount of the school's time and energies which should be expended in adjustment and mental health programs. The curriculum should focus on the child's adjustment or mental health. This position holds that the child's present and future social adjustment is of direct concern to the school and that this concern should be reflected in the curriculum. This approach is sometimes called student-centered because it stresses adaptation of school programs to the abilities and needs of the individual children. At the same time, it is also referred to as group-centered because it stresses the development of skills necessary for group living. Children have their own ideas about what sorts of behavior are desirable or undesirable. In the identification of children's problems and children with problems, it has been increasingly considered important to get the viewpoints of children toward themselves and toward the children around them. Still another topic is measurement of adjustment and the characteristics of well-adjusted person. Measurement of adjustment. Measurement as an instrument of inquiry is now frequently used in behavioral sciences. The following different types of measuring techniques are used. 1. Testing techniques. 2. Projective techniques. 3. Inventory techniques. 4. Sociometric techniques. And 5. Scaling technique. In the area of measurement of adjustment, inventory techniques are the most popular because they have many advantages compared to other techniques. Testing techniques can only be used to assess the characteristics of the individual at the conscious and projective techniques only at the unconscious level. The adjustment behavior is that adaptation to change the circumstances involves both conscious as well as unconscious behavior. Therefore, the two techniques separately are unable to give a proper assessment of individual's adjustment. Sociometric techniques are used for the measurement of social relationships. They can provide clues to the level of social adjustment. Social adjustment is only one part of the individual's total adjustment. The other aspects of his adjustment like physical, mental, emotional, social and occupational are not explored by sociometric techniques. They cannot therefore be used for the accurate assessment of an individual's total adjustment. In scaling techniques, opinions are collected from some other person or persons about the adjustment pattern of a particular individual known to the respondents. Adjustment as a wider phenomenon carries so many things with it, so that one cannot judge the adjustment pattern of another individual from his outward behavior, and the inner private world or reactions of an individual cannot be assessed by the use of scaling techniques. Some important inventories and measures of adjustment. 1. Bell's adjustment inventory developed by Hugh M. Bell. Second one, Edwards Personal Preference Schedule EPPS, published by Psychological Corporation, New York. The third one, the Hedson Personal Adjustment Inventory developed by Joseph C. Hedson. Fourth one, the Mooney Problem Checklist. Fifth one, Asthana's Adjustment Inventory developed by H. S. Asthana. And the sixth one, Teacher Adjustment Inventory developed by S. K. Mangal. Characteristics of a well-adjusted person. A well-adjusted person is supposed to possess the following characteristics. First one, awareness of his own strength and limitation. A well-adjusted person knows his own strength and weaknesses. He tries to make capital out of his assets in some areas by accepting his limitations in others. Second one is respecting himself and others. The dislike for oneself is a typical symptom of maladjustment. An adjusted person has respect for himself as well as for others. The third one, an adequate level of aspiration. His level of aspiration is neither too low nor too high in terms of his own strengths and abilities. He does not try to reach for the stars and also does not repent over selecting an easier course for his advancement. The next one is satisfaction of basic needs. His basic organic, emotional and social needs are fully satisfied or in the process of being satisfied. He does not suffer from emotional cravings and social isolation. He feels reasonably secure and maintains his self-esteem. Then the fifth one is absence of a critical or fault-finding attitude. He appreciates the goodness in objects, persons or activities. He does not try to look for weaknesses and faults. His observation is scientific rather than critical or punitive. He likes people, admires their good qualities and wins their affection. Then sixth one is flexibility in behavior. He is not rigid in his attitude or way of life. He can easily accommodate or adapt himself to change the circumstances by making necessary changes in his behavior. The next one is the capacity to deal with adverse circumstances. He is not easily overwhelmed by adverse circumstances and has the will and courage to resist and fight odds. He has an inherent drive to master his environment rather than to passively accept it. Another one is a realist perception of the world. He holds a realistic vision and is not given to flights of fantasy. He always plans, thinks and acts pragmatically. Ninth one, a feeling of ease with his surroundings. A well-adjusted individual feels satisfied with his surroundings. He fits in well in his home, family, neighborhood and other social surroundings. If a student, he likes his school, schoolmates, teachers and feels satisfied with his daily routine. When he enters a profession, he has a love for it and maintains his zeal and enthusiasm despite all odds. Still another one is a balanced philosophy of life. A well-adjusted person has a philosophy which gives direction to his life while keeping in view the demands of changed situation and circumstances. The philosophy is centered around the demands of his society, culture and his own self so that he does not clash with his environment or with himself. Let us summarize the session. This chapter deals with the concept adjustment. It involves the interaction between the person and the environment. The process of adjustment is explained under titles like motive, goals, frustration, conflict, defense and learning. The different types of defense mechanisms are also discussed. The chapter provides a description of the different tools for the measurement of adjustment and the characteristics of a well-adjusted person. Moreover, the chapter highlights the adjustment of children in school. Now, you can try to answer the questions given here. 1. Explain the process of adjustment. 2. What is the role of defense mechanism in adjustment? 3. Explain the adjustment in school. 4. What is the role of the teachers to improve the school adjustment of the learners? 5. Examine the characteristics of a well-adjusted person. Hope that you may go through the reference books given here. Advanced Educational Psychology by S.K. Mangal in the year 2007, Prentice Hall of India, New Delhi. Adjustment and Mental Health by A. Arkoff in the year 1968, McGraw-Hill Book Company, New York. Introduction to Psychology by Morgan in the year 1950, McGraw-Hill, New York. Thank you for watching this program. We can meet again with another topic. Have a nice day.